Hello, welcome here. Have you ever experienced that peculiar, unsettling sensation of looking back at a decision you made, one that felt perfectly rational and justified at the time, only to be utterly baffled by your past self? Perhaps you found yourself caught in a recurring loop of regret, wondering, why did I keep pouring effort into that failing project? Or how could I have been so blind to the obvious red flags in that relationship? Maybe right now, you're wrestling with a monumental choice, feeling the immense weight of uncertainty, and a quiet, persistent fear nags at you that despite your best intentions, your own mind might be subtly, imperceptibly, leading you astray. This gnawing anxiety is a deeply human experience, a shared vulnerability in our modern lives, the feeling that we are not entirely in command of our own thoughts, that unseen forces within our cognitive architecture are shaping our perceptions and nudging us towards outcomes we later wish we could undo. We pride ourselves on our capacity for logic, for reason, for meticulous deliberation. And yet, day after day, our brains, these magnificent, complex organs, can play sophisticated tricks on us, whispering persuasive untruths that feel undeniably true, pushing us to choose wrong. This isn't about some external manipulation. It is about the very internal wiring that allows us to function. Our brains are incredible architects of reality, constantly filtering, interpreting, and connecting dots to create a coherent narrative. But in this tireless pursuit of efficiency and coherence, they often take shortcuts, develop patterns, and form habits of thought that, while generally useful, can become significant blind spots. These are what psychologists call cognitive biases, systematic error. They are not signs of intellectual weakness, but rather inherent features of the human operating system. Understanding them isn't about blaming your brain, it is about recognizing its incredible, intricate design, so you can collaborate with it more effectively, becoming a more conscious and deliberate navigator of your own life. Today, we are going to embark on a journey into this fascinating and sometimes deceptive. We'll pull back the curtain on three of the most powerful and pervasive cognitive biases: confirmation bias, anchoring bias, and the sunk cost fallacy. By deeply exploring how these mental traps operate, why they exist, and how they manifest in everyday life, you won't just gain knowledge, you'll acquire a practical toolkit to see the world with greater clarity, make more intentional choices, and ultimately reclaim a greater sense of agency over your own destiny. So prepare to question what you think you know, and let's begin this enlightening exploration of how your brain might be lying to you. Our first deep dive takes us into perhaps the most fundamental and far-reaching of all cognitive biases: confirmation bias. Imagine, if you will, that your mind is equipped with a highly sophisticated, but subtly opinionated, search engine. When you pose a question or hold a belief, this search engine doesn't just deliver neutral facts. It prioritizes and highlights information that confirms what you already expect. Confirmation bias is precisely this inherent human tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports your prior beliefs, hypotheses, or values. It's a powerful, often unconscious filter that shapes your entire perception of reality, making it feel incredibly difficult to truly change your mind, even in the face of contradictory evidence. Consider as from that moment on, your brain's internal search engine kicks into overdrive. When you see news reports about car recalls, your eyes might linger longer on those involving your suspected brand. When a friend mentions a car breaking down, you might unconsciously prompt them, was it your suspected brand? If it is, you think, aha, I knew it. If it isn't, you quickly dismiss the instance as irrelevant. You might even actively. This isn't a deliberate act of deception. It's a natural, almost automatic process where your brain prefers the comfort of congruence over the discomfort of cognitive dissonance. It is simply less mentally taxing to integrate information that aligns with your existing framework than to challenge and potentially dismantle that framework. The profound problem, of course, is that while this creates a comfortable, consistent internal world, it also constructs an echo chamber, slowly but surely narrowing your perspective until your view of reality becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your mental search engine isn't just delivering results, it's subtly filtering out anything that doesn't fit, reinforcing your existing biases and making it incredibly difficult to objective. Our brains are incredibly efficient machines, constantly seeking ways to conserve energy. Confronting information that challenges our deeply held beliefs is mentally exhausting. It demands effort to reevaluate, to integrate new potentially conflicting data, and to perhaps restructure our entire understanding of a concept or situation. It is far easier, and therefore more appealing to our energy-saving brains. This mental shortcut, while conserving cognitive resources, often sacrifices accuracy for expediency. Furthermore, there is a powerful psychological need for coherence and consistency. We crave a narrative where our beliefs, actions, and values align. Contradictions disrupt this narrative, creating an uncomfortable psychological tension known as cognitive dissonance. Confirmation bias is one of our primary unconscious tools for reducing this dissonance, allowing us to maintain a stable, albeit potentially flawed, worldview. It also serves a critical ego protective function. Admitting you are wrong, or that your firmly held convictions might be flawed, can feel like a significant blow to your intelligence, your judgment, or even your sense of identity. So we subtly, unconsciously seek to prove ourselves right, even when the objective truth might lie elsewhere. This self-justification mechanism is deeply ingrained, making it incredibly hard to break free from the grip of confirmation bias without conscious effort. Consider the far-reaching impact of confirmation bias in various domains in the realm of politics and social discourse. It is alarmingly prevalent. When you align with a particular political ideology, your news consumption, social media interactions, and even your choice of friends might unconsciously be skewed towards sources and individuals who echo your views. Social media algorithms designed to maximize engagement inadvertently supercharge confirmation bias. If you interact with content expressing a certain political stance, the algorithm will show. Over time, your digital feed becomes a perfectly curated stream of information that continuously reinforces your existing beliefs, making it feel as if everyone thinks like you do. This leads to increased societal polarization, an alarming diminishing of empathy for opposing viewpoints, and a severely skewed understanding of the true diversity of opinions and challenges within a society. You start to believe your perspective is the only rational one because all the evidence you encounter supports it, leading to unconstructive conflict and a breakdown of dialogue. In professional settings, confirmation bias can manifest as disastrous project decisions. A manager deeply invested in a particular strategy for a new product might selectively focus on market research data that supports her initial vision, while downplaying or outright ignoring her team, sensing her strong conviction, might also fall into line, unconsciously seeking data that confirms her belief, leading to a collective blind spot and potentially a failed product launch. Similarly, in hiring decisions, if an interviewer forms an initial positive impression of a candidate, they might unconsciously ask leading questions, give more weight to positive answers, and overlook or rationalize away any weaknesses, confirming their initial favorable assessment rather than objectively evaluating the candidate's true fit. Even in science and research, where objectivity is paramount, a researcher, deeply committed to a hypothesis, might unconsciously design experiments that are more likely to yield confirming results, or interpret ambiguous data in a way that supports their theory, overlooking alternative interpretations. While peer review and replication are designed to counteract this, the initial bias can still slow down the discovery of truth. On a personal level, if you believe I am not good enough, or I always fail at X, your brain will diligently work to find evidence to support these limiting beliefs, noticing every mistake and overlooking every success, trapping you in a self-imposed prison of negative self-perception. So how do we escape this powerful invisible filter that warps our reality? The application of this understanding lies in actively cultivating a mindset of intellectual humility. It's about becoming your own fiercest, yet most compassionate, devil's advocate. When you find yourself strongly gravitating towards a particular conclusion or holding a firm belief, pause, take a deliberate mental step back. Ask yourself, what evidence would truly challenge this? What alternative explanations could there be? What would it look like if my current belief were completely wrong? Actively seek out sources that present a different perspective, not with the intention of tearing them down or proving them wrong, but with a genuine open desire to understand their reasoning, their data, and their underlying assumptions. Engage in conversations with people who hold different views and truly listen to what they have to say, allowing yourself to be genuinely influenced and challenged, rather than just, this doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but it profoundly expands your understanding and inoculates you against narrow-mindedness. A potent practical thinking model here is the two-column test. When faced with an important decision, a strong opinion, or a significant personal belief, actively dedicate time to listing all the reasons and evidence that support your current view. Then, crucially, dedicate equal or more time to bring. This is not about being indecisive. It is about making your decision, making process more robust. For instance, if you are convinced that a new business venture will be a huge success, don't just list all the positives like market opportunity, team strengths, and potential revenue. Also list potential challenges, market saturation risks, competitor advantages, the likelihood of various failure modes, and this isn't about fostering negativity, it is about fostering realism, building a more comprehensive risk assessment, and ultimately making a more informed choice by acknowledging the full spectrum of possibilities. Another powerful application is to cultivate a beginner's mind, or shoshin, as it is known in Zen Buddhism. Approach new information, or even familiar information, with the suspend your pre-existing judgments, your historical context, and your established frameworks, and simply observe, absorb, and analyze. This is particularly crucial in learning and personal growth if you've always believed, I am bad at public speaking. Your brain will continue to confirm this by noticing every stutter, every nervous gesture, and overlooking every moment of connection with the audience. If you approach public speaking with a beginner's mind, acknowledging past struggles but open to new understanding and improvement, you create the psychological space for growth and mastery by actively challenging your own internal filters, by deliberately seeking out disconfirming evidence, and by embracing the beginner's mind. You not only make better, more adaptive decisions, but also foster a more flexible, resilient, and truly. If you are finding this exploration of the mind's hidden workings insightful, and you believe that deeper self-awareness can truly transform your life, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more deep dives into psychology and philosophy to you and others seeking profound insights. Now let's turn our attention to the second cognitive bias, one that can subtly manipulate your perception. Have you ever walked into a high-end store, seen a luxury item originally priced at, say, $5,000, marked down significantly to $2,500, and felt an irresistible urge to purchase it? That feeling of what an incredible deal, it is half off, often stems not from an objective assessment of the item's worth, but from the powerful influence of that initial high price. This is anchoring bias, and it describes our pervasive tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered, the anchor when making decisions. Once this anchor is set in our minds, subsequent judgments and estimates are made by adjusting away from it, and these adjustments are almost always insufficient, meaning our final decision remains heavily influenced by that initial, often arbitrary, number. The insidious nature of anchoring bias is that the anchor doesn't even need to be logically relevant to the decision at hand to exert its influence. Consider a classic experiment demonstrating this. Participants were first asked to write down the last 2 digits of their Social Security number. Then, immediately afterwards, they were asked to bid on items like wine or chocolate. Those with higher Social Security numbers consistently submitted higher bids. The completely arbitrary digits became a powerful, unconscious anchor, subtly influencing their subsequent financial judgments. Your brain, in its quest for efficiency and a starting point when faced with uncertainty, latches onto this initial piece of information, even if irrelevant, as a convenient cognitive benchmark. It then makes adjustments, but those adjustments are almost invariably too conservative, leaving your final estimate or decision heavily skewed towards the initial anchor. It is like trying to pull a heavy anchor up from the seabed. You can move it, but it still exerts a powerful gravitational pull on your overall position. In real life, anchoring bias is a pervasive and incredibly powerful force, particularly in negotiation. If you initially propose a significantly high asking price, even if it is beyond the home's true market value, that high figure becomes the anchor. Subsequent negotiations will revolve around that high number, and even if you come down considerably, the final sale price is likely to be higher than if you had started with a more moderate or even lower initial offer. Conversely, if you are buying a well-researched but initially low-ball, salespeople are masters of exploiting this bias. They might strategically show you an extremely expensive top-of-the-line item, first fay, the decoy item, fay, which, while perhaps out of your budget, sets a very high anchor. This makes the slightly less expensive but still pricey item you really came for seem like a reasonable compromise or even a bargain in comparison to the initial anchor. The first highest price. This bias isn't confined to monetary transactions. It permeates our judgments about time, performance, and even people. Think about first impressions. When you meet someone new, the very first piece of information you gather about them, their appearance, their opening statement, a casual comment from a mutual friend, can serve as a powerful anchor. If that first impression is overwhelmingly positive, you might be more forgiving of subsequent minor flaws or interpret ambiguous behaviors through a benevolent lens. If it is negative, you might interpret even neutral or positive behaviors through a critical lens, constantly adjusting from that initial negative anchor. This can lead to lasting judgments that are difficult to shake, even with overwhelming counter. Similarly, in project management, if a manager gives an initial, perhaps rushed or arbitrary, estimate of 2 weeks for a complex task, that figure instantly becomes the anchor. Subsequent discussions about the project's timeline will inevitably be framed around that 2-week mark, making it incredibly difficult to push for a more realistic, longer duration, even when new information clearly suggests the original 2 weeks feels like the right answer, and deviations from it feel like failures or inefficiencies, leading to rushed work, stress, and compromised quality. The underlying psychological mechanism of anchoring bias is rooted in the way our brains process information when faced with uncertainty. When presented with an initial number or idea, our minds tend to focus on it intensely. We then engage in a process of selective accessibility, similar to confirmation bias, where we try to find reasons why that anchor might be correct or relevant, reinforcing its perceived validity. Subsequent information is then adjusted from this anchor, rather than being evaluated independently from scratch. This adjustment process is typically insufficient because our cognitive resources are limited, and it is a heuristic, a mental shortcut that helps us quickly make sense of the world, but often at the cost of accuracy and objective assessment. Our brains prefer any starting point over the blank slate of absolute uncertainty, even if that starting point is arbitrary. To counteract the subtle yet powerful influence of anchoring bias, the key is to develop strategies for deliberate de-anchoring and conscious re-anchoring. When you are presented with an initial number, price, or piece of information, don't immediately accept it as your default baseline. Instead, consciously force yourself to generate a wide range of alternative estimates or possibilities before you even consider the anchor. For instance, in a negotiation for a new car, before hearing the dealer's initial price, thoroughly research and determine your own fair market value. And this self-generated range acts as your own strong internal anchor, allowing you to evaluate external anchors more objectively rather than being passively pulled by them. A powerful practical model for this is the extreme value exploration approach. When faced with an initial number or estimate, actively consider not just the obvious alternatives, but also deliberately think about what an extremely high and an extremely low value might. Think about what would make it take a full year, all worst-case scenarios, and what would make it possible in 1 month, all best-case scenarios. By forcing your mind to consider these extremes, you broaden your mental frame of reference, making the initial anchor seem less potent and more within a range of possibilities. This also helps you identify hidden variables and assumptions. Another crucial, instead of asking, "Is this price good compared to the anchor?" ask, "What is the true value of this item for service by opportunity, independent of any numbers presented to me?" For a job offer, don't just react to the initial salary figure. Research industry averages for your experience level and location, evaluate the total compensation package benefits, bonuses, growth opportunities, and compare it to your own finance. By prioritizing these objective criteria, you become less susceptible to the arbitrary pull of the initial salary anchor. Similarly, When making decisions about your own performance or a project timeline, don't let an initial, perhaps arbitrary, estimate become your prison. Force yourself to break down the task into its smallest components. Estimate each one independently based on actual work required. This bottom-up approach can help you build a more realistic assessment, rather than simply adjusting from a potentially flawed top-down anchor. By actively and consciously challenging the first number and understanding that its prominence doesn't equate to its accuracy or relevance, you empower yourself to make choices based on a more objective and informed assessment of reality. Finally, let's explore a bias that often leads us to make some of the most frustrating, even self-sabotaging decisions in our lives: the sunk cost fallacy. Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a terrible movie, one you're clearly not enjoying, yet you continue watching because you already paid for the ticket and invested an hour? Or perhaps you've persisted in a failing business venture, pouring more and more financial resources, emotional energy, and precious time into it, thinking, "I've already invested so much, I can't quit now. It would all be for nothing." That agonizing feeling, that powerful, irrational pull to continue down a path, simply because of the resources you've already committed, time, money, effort, emotional energy, it is the irrational tendency to continue an endeavor once an investment in money, effort, or time has been made, even if the current and future costs clearly outweigh the expected benefits, and even if abandoning the project would be the most rational choice. The term sunk cost refers to any cost that has already been incurred and cannot be recovered. In the realm of purely rational economic decision, making sunk costs should be, yet our human psychology profoundly dictates otherwise. We feel a deep, almost instinctual aversion to waste, and abandoning something after a significant investment feels like a tangible waste, a painful loss. This creates a powerful emotional attachment to our past decisions, compelling us to double down on a failing course of action rather than cut our losses and move on. Let's dissect why this happens at a deeper. Firstly, there is the powerful force of loss aversion, a concept deeply explored by behavioral economists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Their groundbreaking research showed that the psychological pain of losing something is roughly twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining an equivalent amount. Abandoning a project, an investment, or a relationship where you've poured significant resources feels like in contrast, continuing offers the hope, however slim or irrational, of recouping those past losses, of somehow turning the situation around and making the initial investment worth it. Our brain, wired to avoid pain, prioritizes avoiding the certainty of a definite loss over making the objectively better decision for the future. The fear of regretting the loss of past investment often overshadows the more rational. Secondly, there is a strong desire for consistency and the protection of our self-image. Admitting that we made a poor initial investment, or that a path we chose was fundamentally flawed, can be a significant blow to our ego. It suggests poor judgment, a lack of foresight, or even a failure. Humans are remarkably adept at rationalizing their past behaviors and justifying their continued commitment. So we subtly, often unconsciously, invent reasons to continue, clinging to the idea that if I just try a little harder, or if I just wait a bit longer, things will miraculously turn around. This desire to appear consistent, both to ourselves and to others, can trap us in increasingly dire and detrimental situations. Think of a senior executive who has publicly championed a particular corporate strategy, even when it becomes glaringly clear that the strategy is failing, perhaps costing the company millions. She might be incredibly reluctant to pull the plug. Her reputation, her past decisions, and her perceived expertise are all tied to that initial commitment. She doubles down, pouring more company resources into a losing battle, hoping to rescue her initial investment and, more importantly, her professional standing. You might be in a long-term relationship that has become deeply unsatisfying, emotionally draining, or even toxic. Objectively, your friends and family might see that you would be far happier and healthier moving on. But the years, the shared memories, the immense emotional energy, the sacrifices made, the intertwined lives, these are all powerful sunk costs. The thought of wasting all that time, or the profound pain of acknowledging that a significant portion of your life was spent on something that ultimately didn't work out, can keep you tethered to the relationship, even as it actively drains your happiness, stunts your personal growth, and consumes your potential. You might articulate it as, "We've been together for 10 years, I can't just throw that away." This sentiment, while emotionally understandable and deeply human, is a classic manifestation of the sunk cost fallacy, preventing you from making the best decision for your future well-being and freedom. The consequences of succumbing to the sunk cost fallacy are widespread and severe. It can lead to financial ruin, continuing to invest in a failing stock or business, career stagnation, staying in a miserable job because of the time invested in getting the degree, emotional exhaustion, persisting in a draining friendship or relationship, and even major governmental blunders, continuing a military campaign that has lost strategic utility due to the lives and resources. In essence, it prevents us from adapting, from embracing change, and from making truly optimal decisions based on present realities and future possibilities. We become prisoners of our past, unable to forge a better future. The application of understanding the sunk cost fallacy lies in cultivating a mindset of radical future-oriented decision, making and fostering the most powerful practical thinking model here is to always ask yourself this critical, liberating question. If I were starting this situation from scratch right now, completely fresh, knowing everything I know currently about its trajectory and potential, would I still choose to invest my time, money, or effort? This simple, yet profound question forces you to ignore the unrecoverable past and focus purely on the present realities and future opportunities. To what is the absolute best course of action now for my future? Well-being and success? By mentally wiping the slate clean, you can make a decision based on logic and potential, not on emotional attachment to what is already gone. Another incredibly powerful strategy is to define your kill criteria up front. Before embarking on any significant project, making a substantial investment, or entering a new venture, be it personal or professional, establish clear, objective metrics that, if met, would signal that it is time to cut your losses and pivot. For a business, this might be a certain level of financial loss, a lack of market traction by a specific date, or a failure to meet key performance indicators. For a personal goal, it might be a consistent lack of progress, an unsustainable drain on your energy, or a clear negative impact on your physical or mental health, or other important relationships. By setting these criteria in advance, you create a rational framework that can override your inevitable emotional resistance to abandoning a failing endeavor later. It provides you with an objective, predetermined reason it transforms a highly emotional decision into a predefined logical one. Furthermore, practice radical acceptance of loss. Understand that not every investment yields a return, and not every path leads to success. Sometimes the wisest, most courageous decision is to acknowledge a past mistake, learn deeply from it, and then consciously, decisively move forward. The resources you've already continuing to invest more doesn't bring them back. It only adds new resources to the pile of what might also be lost, creating an even larger sunk cost in the future. True wisdom and courage often lie not in persistence at all costs, but in the profound clarity to know when to pivot, when to let go with grace, and when to strategically redirect your precious energy, time, and resources towards more promising and full. This fundamental mindset shift frees you from the tyranny of your past choices, empowering you to live more authentically, adaptively, and effectively in the present moment, charting a course towards a future you truly desire. So as we bring our exploration to a close, you can clearly see that your brain is an utterly magnificent instrument, capable of astounding feats of creativity, intricate problem solving, yet, in its tireless pursuit of efficiency, in its deep-seated desire to simplify complexity, to maintain internal consistency, and to protect your vital sense of self and ego, it sometimes takes subtle, sophisticated shortcuts that, without your conscious awareness, can lead you profoundly astray. Confirmation bias, acting like a powerful, unseen filter, traps you in echo chambers of your own making, relentlessly reinforcing what you already believe, even if it is incomplete or inaccurate. Anchoring bias subtly manipulates your perception of value, fairness, and reality, allowing arbitrary initial numbers to dictate your subsequent judgments, often leading to disadvantageous outcomes. And the sunk cost fallacy, rooted in our deep aversion to loss, compels you to persist in losing battles, fearing the perceived waste of past investments more than the very real potential for future gains or the avoidance of further losses. But here's the most profound and liberating insight of all: merely being aware of these biases, understanding their mechanisms, recognizing their manifestations, and anticipating their insidious pull is the first and most crucial step towards fundamentally mitigating their power over your life. Like a seasoned navigator who deeply understands the hidden currents and unpredictable winds of the ocean, you can learn to recognize these powerful mental undercurrents, to anticipate their inevitable pull, and to consciously, deliberately adjust your course. This isn't about transforming yourself into a perfectly rational, emotionless decision-making machine. Such a goal is not only impossible, but arguably instead it's about becoming a more mindful decision-maker, one who possesses a deeper understanding of the intricate terrain of their own mind, and who can consciously choose to engage in more deliberate, insightful, and ultimately more fulfilling ways of thinking and living. By actively questioning your ingrained assumptions, by courageously seeking out diverse, even uncomfortable, perspectives, by critically challenging initial numbers and default positions, and by consistently focusing on future potential and outcomes, rather than being shackled by past investments, you begin the transformative process of dismantling the subtle lies your brain tells you every single day. You empower yourself to break free from reactive, often self-defeating patterns of thought and action, and step into a more proactive, intentional, and authentically self-directed way of living. This journey of self-awareness and cognitive mastery is continuous. It is a lifelong practice, but each small conscious step you take to understand your own cognitive architecture brings you closer to greater clarity, enables you to make wiser, more aligned choices, and grants you a deeper, more profound sense of control and agency over your own destiny. I wholeheartedly encourage you to integrate these insights into your day. Begin by noticing where these biases might be subtly influencing your small, everyday decisions. And then, with practice, you will find the strength and clarity to tackle the larger, more life-altering ones. The freedom, the adaptability, and the profound clarity you gain will be immeasurable, leading to a life lived with greater purpose and less regret. If this deep dive into the hidden workings of cognitive biases has resonated with you, if it has sparked a new understanding or illuminated a path towards more conscious living, and you are eager to continue exploring the hidden depths of the human mind and practical philosophy, please consider subscribing to this channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our future explorations and insights. Your engagement and support not only fuel this journey of shared knowledge and profound self-discovery, but also help us reach more individuals who are seeking to master their minds and live more intentional lives. I hope today's sharing provides you with a new, empowering perspective on the world and on your own incredible mind. Thank you for watching, and I eagerly look forward to seeing you next time.